All right. My co-host and I are very, very excited to be here with you. So we are looking forward to having a great discussions today. As we always say, welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict
Live.
So we're very excited to be here with you guys. So before we launch into our discussions, just some housekeeping stuff, as we always do. First of all, we want to thank our
We want to thank you for all the wonderful comments. I mean, the conversations are so intelligent, so lively, and I think a lot of us are benefiting, including David and I, from the unique kind of perspective that you have being in a different part of the world. Please keep it coming.
Well, indeed, Ross. It was a comment yesterday from one of the gentlemen. I'm not going to mention names out of respect. He was in a Buadar area.
Oh.
So the information was from that part of the world. And he was like, 100% accurate for what you guys are saying. So we want to thank you for that support. We also want to thank our Patreon members for their support. And for you, truly, if you really want to support us, consider the Patreon members. Now, here's the thing. Some of you have mentioned that we need maps and need all that. We are in the process of working on that. But this is where your support comes in. So those are not some easy things. You just get a map from the store. Whatever. Those are very costly and all that stuff. So your support means a lot to us. But we thank you anyway. And please keep the suggestions coming, because that's how we all can learn and we all can improve on the quality of this. I take this opportunity, Ross, to thank our producer.
Oh.
It's because, to me, the success of what you see, there is somebody behind the scenes that doing the work. So, and as a former military myself, so I always used to think in terms of a commander is as good as his troops or her troops. So we want to acknowledge live here the hard work of our producer, for the whole team, for that matter. So we are so thankful for that. So what we're going to be, we also need to mention something to you. In addition to the interviews we're starting to conduct, yes, we do have Kishore on the list. We do have Professor Wolf on the list. We do have Cyrus Jensen on the list. So we're going to have some great guests. It's just a matter of scheduling the stuff, and it takes time. They're busy as well, and we will have them on the show here. So because we want to bring different perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Not all the people we're going to have on completely agree with us, and we're glad. If you're going to make up your own minds, we'd like you to have a diversity of information so that you have what makes sense to you in front of you.
Well, exactly. And this is one of the things we were thinking about, Ross, to do, like what we're going to be doing with our round table.
Yeah.
For the round table, usually we're going to be discussing, deciphering, analyzing the information we talk about, because we do have a position that I take. I can't speak for you, Ross. I speak for myself. I do have a position. I take a position on certain issues. So,
right.
And we figured a different setup like the round table will provide that opportunity for us to.
Because what you and I are about right now is we want to give you the information without our particular points of view leaping forward.
Yeah.
You make up your own minds about what's happening.
Exactly. And the videos we do, yes, we share information and so forth, but usually there is a lot that goes into that just for now. The last announcements I want to mention to you is we are working on a course that we're going to be offering regarding geopolitics, history, interaction among countries. We've been receiving some comments, but also I've been receiving some emails directly asking, is there a possibility that you guys can do a course, whatever? So we are working on it as we speak. We're going to be releasing it soon. It's just a matter of logistics and all that stuff. So I just wanted to give you a heads up today. So.
Well, what's our topic today, David?
What would you like it to be, Ross?
Oh, let's talk about India and China. And
oh my gosh, a topic like that, what is going to generate? So,
but we got some things that happened this week we really need to look at.
Exactly.
Meng Wanzhou, the case is falling apart for the CFO of
Huawei. That is correct. And by the way, we're going to release a video about it next week. So what happened with Meng Wanzhou? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Meng Wanzhou.
Meng Wanzhou. So what they found out is that it was the United States provided a false documentation to justify her detention. So HSBC was aware of what was taking place. So, which means what, in a simple language, is that's going to take the case down. In other words, the judge will say, what are you holding her for? But also, this is a stain on the United States and Canada for approaching this. So we're going to have a video about this next week.
Canadian demonstrators have taken down statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. I was talking to someone from Canada just yesterday, and they are terribly embarrassed about this.
Yeah, well, this so funny. It lined up exactly when we released the video about the genocide, the atrocities and so forth that was committed. Yes, indeed, it was in Winnipeg. That's where the demonstrators went ahead and took down the statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. Britain was kind of like, no, you can't do this. I was like, yes, we can.
And we did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, well, because Canadians, and personally, this is my personal opinion, I admire Canadians for this, literally. This is not about the government. It's about the people of Canada. They gain my respect for acting that way because they said we don't want to have this anymore.
The Taliban taking over Afghanistan at the speed of light.
Well, indeed, the stats that I just looked at this morning, and I do read some reports from some think tanks outside the United States, it's 83%. That's how much they took over. 83% as of this morning. So, and we're gonna be addressing Taliban as part of the conversation or the topic we're gonna be discussing today between India and China. So Taliban are indeed moving faster. And as I said last time in our video, it will be probably before the end of the year, they'll take over Kabul. So, and that's going to demonstrate now the failure of the American foreign policy. Because we didn't deliver on what we promised on. We promised a reconstruction. We promised this, we promised that. We did not. So.
Oh, is that a big conversation?
It is.
For right now.
Not.
The president of Haiti was assassinated by foreigners.
That is correct. It was 2 days ago. What was concerning about that, Ross? 2 Americans were involved, 2 U.S. citizens. As of this morning, I checked the report, and they were 2 involved. They don't know yet who was behind it. They don't know how that happened, but it was some coordination, because this wasn't your average. It was a coordinated an operation where they led.
And a lot of people involved in it.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate. That's why you see Haiti what it is. I just don't see any changes coming up to that country.
Well, they're bankrupt.
They are indeed.
No real prospects.
That's correct.
And Hispaniola Island, they're noted for being the extreme poor end of the island.
Indeed, that's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere.
The port of Dubai, major explosion.
I know. Didn't we just mention the port? There are 2 ports, Al Rashid and Jebel Ali. This port, the explosion was in Jebel Ali in Dubai. They are investigating. They don't know yet, but interesting enough is that Dubai, or United Arab Emirates for that matter, was behind the scene acting to undermine China and Pakistan Gwadar port. I know. Makes you just wonder, is somebody sending a message to Dubai? Because as we said last time, their natural resources are very limited. They don't have much, but what they do have is the services they provide. And those 2 ports, Rashid and Jebel Ali, are considered one of the top in the world. Not anymore with Gwadar and with the port of Singapore and so forth. So we're gonna mention that later on. So,
well, let's move back to our main topic.
Exactly.
China, India have the largest contested border on the planet. And the confrontations of recent have gotten more and more deadly with people being actually killed. And now India sent 50,000 troops to that border.
To the border.
What do you make of this?
Yeah, that is an interesting development. Well, as we always do, guys, just to give you a heads up, we'll do about 20, 25 minutes conversation discussions here. Then we'll open up the floor for your questions. So I hope just prepare your questions. And please, when you send a question, make sure you noted question so we know exactly it's a question, not just some comments you make into someone else. And we like, by the way, you guys, your interaction between each other. So it's a very, very intellectual, very, very respectful. I truly admire that, and I do read that stuff later on after I see the whole transcript. So we thank you for that. Well, indeed, the 2,400 kilometer border between India and China in the Himalayas, it's now coming to the forefront again. And this is nothing new, because if you go back into the history, and by the way, it's a wonderful area, beautiful area. So, but if you go back into history, you have to go back to early 40s or mid 40s, when the communists took over top of the government under the leadership of Mao at the time. So what was interesting, it was during the same decade, India gained independence from
Great Britain.
So so there are some statements out there that says, well, there is a major tensions between the two superpowers. Well, wait a minute. let's put a break on that. India is not a superpower. Let's just clarify this. What India is an emerging economy. China, on the other hand, is a rising power. So let's just make that distinction clear here, because sometimes in the West they just threw the words of those, as we always say, Ross, in international relations, context matters.
Oh boy, does
so India is not it's not a rising power, it's an emerging economy.
Well, what we've seen is back and forth, friendship, enemy, and as a result of what happened in Tibet.
That's correct, because what happened was in the as we said, when India got independence, interesting enough that India also was among the first countries to recognize the
Republic of China.
That's correct.
People's Republic, yeah.
And that's how they developed that relationship. It was some sort of a friendship, if I may use the term, between China and India. But of course, when China took over Tibet and the Dalai Lama had to flee to India, that's when things took a turn to a degree. Because here is where the issue began at that time. It's because the trust. Chinese were also losing trust because they suspected that India was working with the United States and the United Kingdom to facilitate Dalai Lama's escape.
Can I put you on the spot again?
You do? Okay.
We're looking at the expansion of China.
Yeah.
And Tibet is, that's really a questionable area in terms of, okay, well, one of the dynasties actually did rule Tibet, but they seem to be claiming all sorts of territory. Well, they have claimed it.
Yeah.
And just because it was part of somebody's dynasty. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't know. It's so complicated. This is not an easy topic that can be just deciphered in 1 hour discussions, because we're talking about hundreds of years of history here.
Oh, yeah.
So even any entity that claims to decipher this history into 20, 30 minutes, it's nonsense. I acknowledge that one. There is no way we can do that. At least to highlight what the key points that brings those tensions into why India and China now on the verge of this confrontation, if you will. So the idea of that the Tibet, when China took over, it becomes the question of, okay, how far is China willing to go? Well, there is a reason to all what's taking place, because there are certain areas like the Ladakh area.
The chicken neck?
Yeah, no, not that one. There are certain areas that have not been demarcated.
Oh,
because it's too many. There is no signs over there where it belongs, who belongs to whom. And this is where India and China came to an agreement. certain areas, geographical areas, belong to both countries. Usually tensions, you can see where this is going.
Oh, this is not good.
Where tensions started, it started when China, way back, moved heavy equipments to build some roads. And basically, because it was in an area that was not inhabited, there's only few people living in the area. So, but to India, it's much bigger than just territory. So, because remember, the military conflict they had was back in 1962. Thousands of soldiers from both parties or both countries died. Then there was a skirmishes, I believe, in 75. Then it's been calm to a degree between the two till 2017, 2018, and 2020 when they had the recent clash.
Oh yeah,
in which 20 Indian dies and 4 Chinese died, because those are hand-to-hand, combative stuff. So there is the reason to all this, Russ, because both countries signed almost a treaty. There will never be a military like firing. No country will fire at the other.
That's why sticks and stones.
Yeah, this is why they resolved to that. But the whole idea of this is because the tensions of it, and I believe I have some info here about what took place, especially in the area of northwestern India called Akshay Chin, something like. So this is where the tensions have been. So what has been happening around that time, because it's a contentious area, there were certain protocols have been put in place, or codes, if you will. And I'm going to just mention some of them here. It was one that is known as the Ladakh, the Doklam Plateau. It was a territory that intersect between China, Bhutan, and India. So you can just see where. Then there is also the area of Arunachal Pradesh. That's another contentious area in the Eastern Territory in India that China claims is part of its southern Tibet. So you can just see, because there's no demarcation, China will say that's our, India will say that's our. Okay, how are you going to resolve something like that one? So, and those issues have led certain cryptologists or cartographers from Britain mainly to said, okay, how about if we just draw a line? It might not be official, superficial, if you will. And there are about 4 of them. I'm going to mention them to you guys just for you to have an idea, because it's hard to pronounce. So, well, the first one is the Ardak-Johnson line, which is marking the border in Ladakh. So there is a marking there. The second one is McCartney-McDonald line, which is another proposed marking in Ladakh. The third one is McMahon line, which marks the border of Arunachal Pradesh. So you can just see where these tensions are going. One of the key strategic location is called Siliguri Corridor.
Oh, this is the chicken neck.
The chicken neck. They call it the chicken neck. Well, why they call it the chicken neck? Because it is a strategic location. In case of a war, China can block that for India, because that's a choke point. So you can just see where this is.
We know there's this 50,000 troops that India sent to the border.
Yeah.
And then the news behind the news is they've sort of backed off from that position. What do you make of that?
Well, it's the idea of they realize the military, it's not going to cut it. You can't engage China militarily. You got to be crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you should be scared of China. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that the military spending in China far outstripped that of India. Even Pakistan is spending about 4.2% more than what India is spending on its military. Where the key commonality between the two, China and India, is that they are nuclear powers.
Yeah.
And that's why I personally, and I speak for myself, I do not see a military, a hot war, if you will.
Far too dangerous for India.
But hypothetically, should that happen, we all know what the results is going to be. I mean, let's not pretend otherwise, because I don't like to sugarcoat things.
No, he
If there
doesn't.
is a hot war, I don't. If there is a hot war between India and China, China will overrun India. But the consequences of it,
Oh, internationally,
yeah,
geopolitically.
that's another nightmare. But here is the key to all this. Now that India starts reacting, what India end up doing is they decided to cancel all the Chinese apps inside India, because there is tremendous economic trade between China and India. And I do not understand, and this is my personal opinion, I do not understand the logic of why India is doing that. On the other hand, I also question why China, knowing that where things are going for it with the BRI, with all the projects they are doing, why will they want to be looking for a military confrontation with India on the border?
You suspect they're not looking for it. They don't in any way want it.
What I suspect is that China's aim is to claim the territory that it says it belongs to it. And here's the thing, China's not backing down.
Well, we've certainly seen it. President Xi in his speech, knock heads.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
and what's going to be fueling, if I were to advise President Xi, hypothetically, well, one of the things you're going to have to think about it is you're going to have to stand tall. Why is that important? It's because of what India is doing now with the Quad, per se. So, and this is where I don't see the logic of India's approach to all this.
An agreement that's to contain China.
Yeah, and for what?
Yeah,
and
for what?
You know, China is already way on now, because what India does not want, is it does not want China to be the unipolar power in Asia. Well, it is, whether they like it or not. It's a fact. When you look at the economic growth of China, I mean, you look at ASEAN countries,
Yeah.
how they are thinking strategically. The recent one was South Korea, for example. How they think strategically. So who's left in the Quad? It's Australia, Japan, India, and the US. And I think, and this is again my opinion, the West or the United States is using India because India is subversive to the United States.
Let me bring up Pakistan.
Oh, that's a good point.
You know, the contentious relationship for decades now between India and Pakistan, and now contentious with China. They've got two fronts that they're battling here.
Well, that's correct. And this could be one of the issues as to why India is upset. Why India is upset also because China, Pakistan, economic.
All the investment that China's
in
making
Gwadar.
in Gwadar, for a perfect example.
Yeah.
The infrastructure that China is sponsoring in Pakistan.
Exactly. Well, actually, India made it clear that is objecting to BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. Who cares? China's going to move forward anyway, because where India's concern is that, especially now with Gwadar, where China's investing so much money.
Yeah.
And guess what they're going to do with their investments? They're going to protect it.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to, and rightly so. If we are advising a client how to approach something like that, that will be one of the actions we will advocate for. If you are investing large sums of money, you want to make sure to protect your investment.
So there's going to be a military involved, Chinese military involved.
There will be.
In Gwadar.
Yeah.
And a large Chinese community will spring up.
Yeah.
As it always does.
And this is where India is kind of very, very concerned, geopolitically speaking, because they saw they will not be able to sustain dealing with two fronts. On the Afghan side, on the Chinese side. That's why they went ahead and cut a deal with, and we did that video on it. And actually, we got a lot of feedback on that video. There were very some comments from our viewers, very interesting, engaging comments for that. I learned a lot from those as well. So,
well, we see that India is looking west. What's that all about?
Well, India is because it's just, you know, I think, and again, and this is where I disagree with certain Western media think tanks or whatever you want to call them, when they use the term a rising superpower about India. It does not have that status. You can't. That's like calling somebody a doctor when he or she is not a doctor, or somebody, whatever title you want to give somebody.
Yeah.
If he or she does not acquire that through experience and all that stuff, you can't do that because it's unethical. The same thing, the way I look at it, it's a Western media saying, well, India is a rising superpower. It is not. It is an emerging economy. Yes, you cannot ignore the Indian market, because when you look at this conflict, Ross, and where it's taking place, just in that part of the world that contains 1/3 of the global population.
Yeah.
I mean, let that sink in for a moment. 1/3 of the global population. So, and this is where, you know, we have to call spade a spade. That's the way I look at it. So from a geopolitical and economic aspect, India's looking at it like, oh my gosh, we're going to be left in the middle, hanging between two. You know,
Which is true.
yeah, well, it's a fact.
Unless Modi can come up with, my observation is he's a pretty smart guy.
He is smart, but he's nationalist.
And whoever the cool heads in India are, they're reaching out to lots of other places.
They're trying, but also remember, the whole tension with China also spills over to the relationship between India and Pakistan, which we all know it's a contentious relations, no matter what. Luckily, the ceasefire has been holding up, but what India did in Kashmir was not what a so-called democratic country would do.
That's an important issue.
It is. It is. There are those who saying, historically speaking, that Kashmir belongs to India. Well, hold on a second. I had some conversations with some friends from Kashmir, some from, you know, Jammu and Kashmir areas, and they're saying otherwise. You know, I'm not saying I'm just buying whatever they're saying. I'll do my own facts. I'll check my own facts.
Exactly.
But the idea of you can't just claim that, and because of what India did, and I followed that closely when they had that crackdown in Kashmir. It was not what you would expect from a so-called democratic country. That's where I came to the conclusion back then that the Modi's government is more of a nationalistic than it is. But these tensions with China also spills into that, because Pakistan and China are what they call iron brothers. Because Pakistan starts to think in terms of, I gotta do what's strategically important for my country. This is what the prime minister will be thinking, or any leader will have to be thinking in terms of that. So that's how I see it. So it's the idea of these tensions. The question we need to ask is this: what's fueling this? Is the United States pushing behind the scenes? Because here is the thing: to the United States, India is the geopolitical wild card to maintain that kind of balance and against China.
You know, another consideration here is India and the Taliban.
India and the Taliban. What do you mean by that, Ross?
I understand there are talks going that Indians are...
They're just talking.
Okay.
They're just talking. It will lead nowhere, because if you know anything about the history of Taliban and Pakistan are like this.
Oh.
So that's why they're not gonna go with any. So anyway, we're gonna move into your questions here, and we'll answer whatever we can, and we go from there. Let's start with the first one. Barry, good to see you, Barry. And the question is, watched RT, some experts say China will get herself in a hellhole by investing in Afghanistan. What do you guys think?
Well, they all got one contract.
Yeah, I'll have to disagree with that assessment. Of course, I could be wrong, but based on what I know, I don't see that happening. Because here is why: Afghanistan has some really, really good natural resources underground. It's a rugged terrain, but there are some really rare earth mineral stuff in that country. So China investing, it will be to its benefit moving forward, but also it's strategic as part of the BRI. So I don't buy that assessment. I disagree with it. Beryakov, good to see you, Beryakov. The question, China just toppled the US as India's #1 export destination. Do you think economically, India, with their saber rattling, can sustain the economy hit as what Australia is experiencing now?
Oh, good question.
That is a good question, Beryakov. And this kind of questions, Beryakov, are of a strategic dimension to it. So this is where the geopolitical assessment comes in to really determine how things are going to move forward. So let me just look at the first part of that question again. Beryakov. So #1, so China just toppled the US as India's #1. Yeah, I do see that, because now India is thinking in terms of, are we creating these distensions with China that is undermining our market?
And they are.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Right.
Would you want to be trading, Ross, with a big country, or you want to be trading with a small country? It's common sense. So India is going to have to think twice now about how to proceed. On the other hand, China is also thinking in terms of, okay, what will happen if I push India to the corner? Because remember, what a lot of people do not know is that India and the United States are not allies. No, they just have a cooperation like any other country. If they were allies, it's a different story. But China is thinking strategically also. They don't want to push India to the corner, because India might end up going all the way into the US camp. So far, they're not. But for the economic aspect, India is concerned because of where Asia is going, especially having project like Gwadar port next door. This is where China, where India is concerned. So, but China is moving forward whether India likes it or not. So, I hope I answered your question, Beryakov. Let's see the next one. Jiokl. I don't know how to pronounce it. Jiok. Okay. Good to see you here, and thank you for your question. The question is there any hope of India ever becoming a major power, given the institutional corruption that seems to dominate the country's ruling class?
Oh, this is a really good question.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And this is why I disagreed with that assessment that I read in some think tanks, claiming that India is a rising superpower. It is not. So, and yes, the corruption inside, it's a mess. I'm not pointing fingers at India, because corruption, we even have it here in the US. It just ours is settled, shall we say.
At least it used to be.
Yeah. Washington is corrupted, there is no other way of saying it. As an American, I'm going to say it. So, but yes, the problem with India is getting involved in some areas like the Quad, for example, that will not benefit India in any way. And that's personally what I do not understand.
Yeah.
Why squander your resources on being in a partnership that doesn't bring you any benefits? So that's no, I don't see that any changes coming up, and let alone the Modi's government is a nationalistic one, and look at just what they did in Kashmir. And I just don't see any changes to India. I hope they change it, but they do have the potentials. Ariel, good to see you, Ariel. I was wondering where you are. I didn't see your comments last time. So, but good to see you. The question is, do you think India's software sector could combine efforts with Chinese IT multinationals? That's a great question. This is like it's an economic one, which you will think that will be the best thing to do it.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. I mean, look at the intellectual capital of both
countries.
Those countries. Yeah, they could be remarkably powerful.
You're absolutely correct. And we can't deny the fact or the truth about India's capabilities in the software. I mean, look what Microsoft is doing. Most of the engineers are, the head of Apple, whatever, is from India. I mean, Indian background, that is, or ethnicity. Yeah, that will be a smart move to do. But when India embarks on those kind of policies of, I gotta follow what the US is saying, I gotta follow what Britain is saying, you end up chipping away from where the golden opportunities are. So yes, it will be a great benefit to both of them. China has a deep pocket. India will have that technology, software understanding and so forth. If they combine their forces together, can you imagine what they come up with?
You know, India has universities that are comparable to our very best in every way. And the technology development coming out of India is phenomenal. As the Indian contribution to the technology here in the United States is.
Exactly.
They're behind so much of what's going on good in the United States technologically.
Exactly, Russ. And the one positive thing I see out of this, if they decide to do it, is the chip manufacturing. Yeah, that will resolve the issue of the shortage of microchips. So I hope it works out, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. Next question. Walter, good to see you, Walter. And the question is, do you think the current border standoff between India and China was instigated by the US, in which US is using India as geopolitical tool to destabilize China or at least slow down China? You hit the nail on the head. You know, I couldn't agree more, because that's exactly what it is. So for India to, it's a wild card, a geopolitical wild card that the US is playing in the region, especially now that the US is out of Afghanistan. So where the challenge that I see India is going to be facing is they will not be able to control every aspect of what China is doing. Yeah,
not even close.
Yeah. So, and that becomes, what is the usefulness of India in that role? You know, it'll become like second Australia for that matter.
Oh, yeah.
And if that is the case, or if that becomes the case, all China needs to do is exactly what they did with Australia.
We'll get it from somebody else.
Exactly. And I don't see India wanting to risk that, because you know, with the poverty that's going on in India, there are still some serious domestic issues India needs to deal with and allocate its funding for to benefit the livelihood and the welfare of its citizens.
You know, it seems to be something of a boomerang arrow, because all these confrontations that the United States is fostering, all they're doing is making China much tougher to deal with.
Yeah, well, China understands. This is where China now is taking one step back just to see how things are, because they are realizing India is being used to slow down or contain. There is no way you're going to contain China.
Right.
We're not going to be able to. So. Next question. Boon Gentek.
Hey,
good to see you, Boon. The question, Kishore Mahbubani says quite often that Modi met India's, it says that Modi met Xi a lot. Is there a reason for that? Are the Indian government playing the US? Also, can you explain why is India always following the US? Well, I'll start with the first one. You know, there were some talks, but that was before the 2020 scrimmages on the border, and yet Xi did invite Modi to China in a reciprocal visit when Xi went over to India. And as to why the India is following the US, it's because I feel, and I do say it the way it is that India usually always bow to the US demand. And I always go back to the example of the Iran oil. India used to import oil from Iran. The US said to India, stop buying oil. India did. And I was like, I was shocked and surprised by, you know, a sovereign state like India.
Yeah.
Just bow. There might be something, I don't, you know, it's kind of didn't make sense to me at all. So why bow to the US? It's because India depends to a degree on the US hegemonic global stuff, even though it's diminishing right now. Still, the US is a force. You're not going to deny that or just dismiss that. But India's kind of trying to play both sides. Could it be that India is playing the US? It's a possibility. It's survival, as I call it, and especially now more than ever. So. Next question, Nick. Nick, good to see you, Nick. And the question is, will Russia play a role in helping to keep the peace in check between India and China? War now is that region does not benefit anymore except the Western governments. A good point. A good point. I do see China. As a matter of fact, I did read something recently that while the US is pushing India, Russia is supporting the Bank of China regarding its projects in Pakistan. So you can just see where the US is pushing and where Russia is pushing. So, and this is, I don't see it going that direction, but India at some point is going to have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, why are we embarking on a policy that doesn't benefit us overall? Because, and I believe in this, a hot war with China will not be pretty.
Unparalleled disaster is what we're talking about.
Yeah, and this is not to say that countries should be scared of China or fear China. That's not what we're saying. All we're saying is what is pragmatic, engaging with them that way. And for India, it will not be a smart thing to do because India cannot afford to fight on two fronts. That's the way I see it playing out geopolitically. The next one, Harry. Good to see you, Harry. The question is, how big an international incident is the Estonian consul being banished from Russia after FSB caught him trying to steal classified Russian documents? It sounds like a pretty big deal to me. And it is. Yeah, it is, Harry, because there have been some, as a matter of fact, one issue recently was in Belarus also. And also with Hungary. Hungary is visiting China recently. So, yeah, because Russia will be concerned as to what those classified documents are for and for whom, and what was the intent objective of all that. So, if that happens in my country, for example, as a head of state, well, that will be the first course of action I will take, is shut down that consulate, expel those diplomats, and find out, first of all, you cannot arrest a diplomat, of course, because they are diplomatic immunity and so forth. But yeah, it will raise questions as to what is the purpose of that. So that will be the answer for that one. William, good to see you. William N. Good to see you here, man. China, the question is, China never allowed any US allies directly on their border. Example, Korea, Vietnam, therefore, Korea. Vietnam, therefore, will China allow India to become a US ally when their borders still in dispute?
Oh, another good one.
Very good one. And this is a geostrategic question, if I may add to this one. Yeah, I don't see that happening, because what will happen with that, if India will allow that, then US assets will move. When I say assets, I'm referring to satellites and all the other technology that will keep an eye on the border. And if you keep an eye on a border, you can expand the operation into the. So I don't see that happening. China will not allow it. That's why China is not backing down from the borders. However, they might resolve the issue directly with India without getting into a hot confrontation per se. So I don't see that happening. They won't. Yeah, go ahead, Ross.
Well, we have some history of India and China negotiating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and coming to acceptable terms. Do you see that happening?
They did before. This one could also work. It just at this point now, remember, to India's favor or what's supporting India's position is its nukes.
Yeah.
Remember, if it was another country, that would be a different story. However, that is not just the point for that. The point is both countries, they're going to have to think pragmatically. And this is where I see the best solution to that conflict right now, because it's the longest border disputes that is going on in the world. So for them, if they come to an agreement of sort, that will be beneficial.
The question is, without the bravado of we're going to stand tall against the Chinese, is there a political consequence in India? Because there's you see a lot of our troops are so tough of going, well, their troops are tough, but this isn't about troop size. How tough the troops are.
But
this is about nuclear power. This is about a lot of serious issues.
That's correct, Russ, because as we said earlier, because we're dealing with a nationalistic government.
Yes.
Now, when Manmohan Singh was the head of India, when Vajpayee was the head of India, you won't hear this rhetoric from them. Why? Because they were moderate. They understood how to approach this international relations aspect. Narendra Modi is fueled by that nationalism. He changed. He was not that way when he came to power, but that's just how it works. All right, Wamu, good to see you here, man. Question is, will China instigate the breakup of India by arming fighters in Kashmir, the northeast region, and Maoists in central India if India keeps on China bashing? I do not, personally, I could be wrong, I do not see China going into that direction yet.
You even think it's a possibility? I mean, that doesn't seem to be China's
It doesn't,
foreign policy.
I don't see China going there literally, because if you have your fingerprints on something like this, that's gonna start discredit your legitimacy as a global power. And China is rising to that global status. They're gonna displace the US within a few years, economically speaking, and they are not gonna wanna risk it that way. If I were advising the President Xi or Chairman Xi, I would not advise for something like that, because that's not the right thing.
Also, do the Chinese want chaos on their southern border?
They don't want that,
because that kind of intervention would lead to chaos.
The
whole subcontinent.
I think what they're gonna do, what the Chinese gonna do, assuming that India will agree to that, and China will only give them one chance for that, is let's sit down and talk. If they do, then they'll resolve it. If they don't, then China's going to embark on its own policies. So that's the way I see it moving. Next one, David Ong. Good to see you, David. The question is Australia, we talk a lot of India. In Australia, we talk a lot of India to absorb our export we lost in China. Do you think India can fill the gap, especially when we lose our iron ore export? And David, I'm taking it to you from Australia. That's from Australia. So.
One of the considerations here is India doesn't have the wealth that China has.
No.
And you take a look at things like wine. I mean, how much?
Yeah. For iron ore in Australia, we all know, and I'm sure you do, David. That's one of the major industries, and I don't see India absorbing that, because India is not at that point yet. India has a lot of challenges when it comes down to infrastructure.
It's just going to go there.
Yeah, they need to. You cannot improve. China didn't come to where it is today overnight. That was the work of the last 30, 40 years. But what did it start with? It started with the infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah. With no infra. Look at and I'll talk as an American, where our issues here in America is that our infrastructure is crumbling. And that crumbling infrastructure is reflected into how our economy is doing. So I don't see India replacing that at all. And China can go anywhere else to get iron ore from. Let alone now they just established that relationship, economic that is, with Turkmenistan, and there is a lot of natural resources in that part of the world. And also, don't forget Afghanistan. I bet you China is going to have some projects in Afghanistan when the dust settles. That's what I see it going.
Which might be very soon.
Next one, Unknown. Good to see you here, Unknown. The question is, do you think that if a hot war erupts between China and India, US will come to India's aid? Short answer is no. Because the US is not going to want to put its neck into something. We had enough engagements in conflicts. We wasted trillions of dollars. American people are fatigued when it comes down to this stuff. Second thing, I don't see personally, that's my personal opinion. You might have a different one of us. I don't see a hot war between India and China because the stakes are so high. I'm going to say it. Hypothetically, there is a war. China's going to, it'll take care of business. That's no brainer. So, but on the other hand, is the consequences of that. And again, with any country that if you corner a country that possesses nuclear weapons,
they're going to use them.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of that's what I will do if I am cornered. So, but I don't see a hot war is going to get to that. So. Carnivorous, good to see you here, man. Question: Kashmir is split into one part in India, the other part in Pakistan. The CPEC passes through the Pakistan side. The China-Pakistan economic corridor passes through the Pakistani side. Do you think India will ask us to pack a base in the Indian Kashmir to counter that? No way. No way. Good question, brother. Good question. No way. The reason being because Pakistan will not allow it, first. And second, one of the issues that India is having right now is the project that China is involved with Pakistan.
Yeah.
This is why they are objecting to the BRI. But there's nothing they can do about it. It's an $8 trillion project. Who is India to dictate whether they like it or not? China's going to tell them, well,
too bad, we're doing it
go
anyway.
take a hike.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, no, put in a base in Kashmir. No, that will trigger a war because Pakistan is not going to have it. Because remember what India did in Kashmir, and as I said earlier, I was following that stuff closely because I have friends from Kashmir. What they did was not appropriate in a democratic, so-called democratic society. You can subject an autonomous region like Kashmir and Jammu to what India did. So by even cutting off internet. So allowing a base there, no, it's going to lead to some major, and that could erupt into some uncontrollable conflict. So, but I don't see that happening. Alex Jado, good to see you, Alex, and thank you for being here. So, question: in your opinion, Russia and China recent meeting in the planning out the Euro-Asia bloc that would be independent of the Western economic system means for the world. So, in other words, what will be the European Asian bloc if it will challenge, for example, the EU? I kind of understood your questions. Well, it'll take time for that because they are talking, as a matter of fact, to Russia and China. They're talking about an Asian economic bloc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like like ASEAN, for example.
Right.
There will be something similar to that. It's just Russia will be part of that one. Yes, it will have a major impact on one sector mainly, is the energy. Defense, whether that's going to translate into military alliance of sort, it's a possibility, but I don't even see that moving off the ground sooner. Because here is the thing. You can think about this in the big picture. When I say big picture, I'm referring to the big geopolitical picture, that is, with what China is doing right now, building over 100 silos. Those are for ICBM, and we're going to do a show about that one soon. I'm just waiting on some confirmation of some information regarding that. So, yes, I can see this Asian Economic Forum or platform, whatever, rivaling that of the EU, because that will act as a bulwark against the West.
Exactly.
But it's going to take time, and there is a lot of investments into it. All right, one more questions, and we're going to have to go get some other recording done. Last question goes to Jack Robert. Good to see you, Jack, and thank you for being here. Taliban problem going to hurt Pakistan and Russia, or even China? The short answer is none. Actually, hold on. It's gonna hurt Russia. It's gonna hurt Pakistan, Russia, or China. None. Here is why. Because if you know the history of Pakistan, of Taliban rather, as I mentioned earlier, Pakistan plays a major role when it comes down to how or the survival of Taliban. Taliban is not your average fighters. Like we always say, there's not some homie guerrilla, whatever.
Yeah.
They are well organized. And that organization stems from the support of certain governments. Yeah.
Shocking, right?
Yes, there are some governments that provide in certain things. So to China, it'll make perfect strategic sense to kind of deal with the Taliban, because Taliban is what's going to be controlling Afghanistan, whether the West or the US likes it or not. We couldn't defeat the Taliban. That's the reality. Washington does not want to accept it. It became clear to me as one who was in Afghanistan, spent a few years there as part of the US government. It became clear to me back in 2007, we're not going to defeat the Taliban. I read enough about the Taliban before I even got there to understand. And when I was on the ground, I saw with my own eyes, it became clear to me, we're not going to defeat the Taliban. So to China, why get in a fight with Taliban? For what? Instead, you could bring them on board, especially when it comes
and
up
that's
to
the Chinese style of doing things anyway.
Exactly.
They will cleverly we'll accept you whoever you are, and we'll find a win-win scenario where everyone benefits.
Exactly.
That's what they do.
Yeah. And to Taliban, I don't know if we all remember what they said back in 2002 when we toppled them out of power. There was one particular statement that still resonates for me, and it was, "We will come back."
Well, they predicted the future quite well.
Well, it's kind of, that's what it is. So I don't see that. As to Russia, no, Russia, as a matter of fact, learned the lessons, and it's almost like payback for the US. So I won't be surprised they'll be supporting the Taliban. So, well, we want to thank you so much for your engagement. This is what I like about our viewers, Ross.
Intelligent questions,
Yeah.
really engaged in the conversation.
Yeah, once in a while you get somebody who spews some nonsense, but that's what you do. You forgive their ignorance. That's all.
That's exactly right.
We thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, be safe. Bye-bye.